your moderator. The 104-year-old League of Women Voters is a political, nonpartisan organization of men and women that encourages informed and active participation in our democracy. We work to increase understanding of major policy issues and influence public policy through education and advocacy. Although the League advocates for issues after extensive study, it never endorses or opposes candidates. The views expressed this evening will be those of the candidates, not of the sponsoring organization. Please be aware that the League of Women Voters neither supports nor opposes the candidates. Since redistricting has changed some Colorado House district lines, you may not be sure of your House district. To confirm which district you are now in, go to the Colorado Secretary of State website, govotecolorado.com, choose Find My Registration, fill in the brief form with your information, then select the County and District Information tab. The purpose of this forum is to inform voters. We hope that your time spent here will help you make informed decisions on Election Day, November 5, 2024. This evening, I will be the moderator of the forum. League members that will be helping include the technical support provided by Beth Hendricks, Executive Director, League of Women Voters, Colorado. Question screeners will be from the League of Women Voters, Weld County, Mary Monahan, Chair, Barb Winery, Voter Service Coordinator, and Kathleen Milligan, Voter Editor. The goal of this forum is to present the views of the candidates seeking Colorado State Representative offices and Senate office in a fair, nonpartisan setting, so that you, the voter, can make an informed voting decision. Before we begin, I'll ask you to listen as I review League guidelines for candidate forums. The ground rules have been distributed to the candidates, however, the questions have not. This forum is not a debate. There will be no rebuttals from candidates or comments from the audience. The purpose of this forum is to inform voters through respectful questions and listening. No campaign banners, signs, literature handouts, t-shirts, or other campaign items will be allowed on camera. The candidates for each position will present opening statements in alphabetical order by district. We will alternate opportunities for each candidate to answer questions during the forum. Closing statements will be in reverse alphabetical order by district. All candidates for each position were invited to attend. If a candidate indicated that he or she would not or could not attend, we invited him or her to give written opening and closing statements that I will read. The candidates will have 2 minutes for opening remarks and 1 minute for a closing statement. 1 minute will be allowed for responses to questions. Questions will apply to all candidates. All candidates may respond to any question that has been asked. The candidates may choose not to respond to every question. The timing clock will be displayed on the screen with the vote 1-1 behind it. The tune will briefly sound when time is up, and speakers will be allowed to complete a sentence or thought. As your moderator, I am responsible for enforcing time limits. I may interrupt candidates if I believe you are straying from the subject. Questions were developed and screened by the Colorado League of Women Voters and the sponsoring league. These questions are broad in nature and cover a variety of issues pertinent to the 2024 election and voters. Time near the end of the forum will be given to allow for questions from the audience, which will be screened by our panel for appropriateness duplication, and local interest. Participant questions can be submitted through the Q&A section of the webinar. If a question is directed to one candidate, any of the other candidates may also answer the question. Candidates may not use any type of props. However, speaking from notes is allowed, but they may not be shown to the audience. All electric devices, except the device candidates use for the forum, must be turned off during the forum. Please mute your cell phones. The link to this video will be posted on our website, Facebook page, and the League of Women Voters Colorado YouTube page the next day. The League of Women Voters requests that any recordings only be shown in their entirety. The candidates participating for each of the House District positions are House District 50, Ryan Gonzalez and Mary Young. House District 64, Ryan Armagost and Mark Matthews. Senate District 13, Scott Bright and Matt Johnston. Carlos Barron, who is running unopposed from House District 48, indicated that he is unable to be here this evening because of a previous commitment. He did not submit an opening or closing statement. We will now begin with opening statements. We will start with Ryan Gonzalez.
Hi there. Well, thank you so much for putting this together, the League of Women Voters, and thank you to everybody who was able to put this together. My name is Ryan Gonzalez. I'm running for House District 50. I am the proud son of Mexican immigrants who came to this country with nothing but their clothes on their back. And I was raised by a single mom with 3 kids and who is also a domestic violence survivor. And like many of the people in this community, I just really want to get the opportunity to not only thrive, but also succeed, and for my family to succeed. And we see what's happening in recent years with affordability and just crime and a lot of stuff that's just unfolding before our very eyes. And I just really want to serve and represent this community. I feel like we've had a lot of people who are out of touch and make decisions and policies that have truly hurt the people that they claim to help. And we have to get back to a balance. My mom told me to work hard and never depend on anybody for handouts, and to continue to have that mindset to not only succeed, but also be able to give back to a community that's given so much to me. I love this country. I love this state. I love this community. And the people here are truly incredible. Getting to meet them and knowing their issues, their voices, their concerns, seeing how we can work together to make Colorado more affordable and just a better place to live. And not only for that, but also for my nieces and nephews that I currently have, making sure they have a good education, making sure that we're able to leave it in a better place than how we found our community, and just overall be a servant for the people. And that's why I'm here today. And I would really like your support. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, Mary Young. Can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
Well, I know the timer didn't start. Thanks to the League of Women Voters, I am excited to talk about the great work I've accomplished for the people of Greeley, Evans, and Garden City, and how I will build on that work in the next session of the General Assembly. I am using my extensive experiences of decades as a community leader, a school psychologist, and a special education teacher. In my position as the state representative for House District 50, as a recognized leader at the Capitol, I have successfully passed numerous bills, many bipartisan over the last 5 years, 39 this last session, that are responsive to the needs of the people right here in this area. These bills improve the daily lives of hardworking families by addressing the economy and affordable housing, mental health, and individuals with disabilities. As a member of the Education Committee, I've worked intensively on many education issues, including funding and school safety. I passed major bills, including being the main sponsor to establish and fund a medical school at UNC. This effort will attract more students to the Greeley area and dramatically improve our economy. Listening to the women in our community, I support women's access to health care, including reproductive health and abortion care, without government interference. As I talk to constituents at the door, it is clear there is a need to focus on providing solutions to the continued impact of inflation when buying groceries and gas. As inflation continues to lower, we need to ensure that price gouging doesn't occur at a grocery store or as we pump gas. I appreciate the applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Now from House District 64, Ryan Armagast.
Thank you. I first and foremost want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this on. Thank everyone that's participated in putting this together and those that are watching to learn more about the people looking to represent your district. I'm Ryan Armagast. I was born and raised in LaSalle, Colorado. I grew up in Weld County throughout my childhood. Small town of LaSalle, also very rural. I've been exposed to the need for bridging the urban and rural divide that we have in Colorado that's only grown more and more separated over time. The other thing that I was able to do is after graduating high school, I joined the military. I joined the Marine Corps, and from there came over to the Colorado Army National Guard, finished with 22 years of service in the military. During that time, I also spent 10 years with Larimer County Sheriff's Office as a deputy and 2 years with Evans Fire Department as a volunteer firefighter. My life has revolved around service. The only thing I could think to be the right direction to take after retiring from the military and law enforcement was to serve the people in a different capacity. I took it as a step up in a bigger world of service in serving House District 64 for the last 2 years. I've focused on public safety. I've focused on victim advocacy. I've focused on veteran services and constitutional rights. I still have been and continue to focus on mental health and addiction treatment and diversion. I plan to do that for the next however long I can stay in office with being reelected into House District 64. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to hear what we all have to say, and look forward to a good forum.
Thank you, Ryan. Next is Mark Matthews.
Hello. I too would like to thank the League of Women Voters as well as the other participants for putting themselves out there. And so I am not a politician. I'm a retired internal medicine physician. And since retiring, my wife and I have been working a small farm in Mead. And I felt that this was a good time for me to give back to my community. During my nearly 40 years of practicing medicine, I care for thousands of patients, and I learned to listen and work together to address their concerns. I would like to bring this approach to listening and working together to the Colorado State House in order to address the consequential issues facing our state, issues such as healthcare. Everyone in Colorado deserves high quality, accessible, affordable health care, including those who live in rural communities. Also, everyone should be the primary person who has the say about what health care they receive, especially reproductive health care, not the government and not an insurance company. Education is another issue that I deeply care about. I believe that students all across this district and all across our state deserve schools that have the resources to attract good teachers, to have modern classrooms, and have all types of learners. There are many, many problems that we will have to deal with during the Colorado session. And I think we need to elect serious people who are willing to do the work to address these issues. And I look forward to hearing more during this forum.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we have Senate District 13, Scott Bright.
Special thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this forum. Really appreciate the opportunity. I've been a lifelong resident of Senate District 13. My career in early childhood education has involved a significant level of protecting high quality options for kids and parents. As such, I've found myself advocating at the Capitol for that very thing. 2 sessions ago, I was at the Capitol in the Democrat House Education Chair's office, describing that very thing about how we need to protect those high quality options for 3-year-olds. And about 2.5 minutes into my meeting with her, she quietly stood up and opened the door and wasn't interested in hearing the rest of my statement, which is too bad because I feel like we have done a disservice to 3- and 4-year-olds in our communities by this. And then watching the House Education Committee vote down that high quality option for families and high quality options for parents really galvanized me and made me want to step into this and make a difference for those families. I believe in parent driven choices on their children's education. I will champion safer communities by ending cashless bail, promoting truth in sentencing, and felonize fentanyl. I will be defending the U.S. Constitution, including all of the amendments. I will be promoting affordability of cost of living by reducing the property tax burden that we all share and protecting Tabor, and also cutting the cost of health insurance wherever possible. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you, Scott. And last we have Matt Johnston.
Hello, thank you all so much for putting this on, as we've all said, and to all the candidates, even my opponent, thank you for running. It's much harder than you might think it is to do this, and I really appreciate anyone that does step up to run. I believe everyone deserves a voice. I thought about it today, and one thing that came up was the idea of body autonomy and the need for body autonomy throughout every bit of our life. I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old daughter and my wife, and I am happy to say that I support the idea of body autonomy and keeping doctors' offices clear of political motives. I also want to say there's a lot of rhetoric going on right now in our political world, and it is based purely on divisive talk, thoughts, and partisanship. Both parties know I'm just not a partisan the way that I need to be sitting right here. And we are all much more alike than they say we are. I go door to door a lot, and that is the number one thing that I think we need to be aware of. We are all much more alike than they say we are. And there's a need for us to all take on home ownership and make that our generational wealth. A lot of underserved communities do not have the ability to own a home, and they're forced to rent. And I want to make sure we find paths for home ownership for the Latino community, single women with kids, and all of us, because that is the only way that us that don't have 3rd generational wealth, that's the way that we can actually have some kind of economic benefit from what we see today. So I'm really poised to go do this. I fought the good old boys on Brighton City Council for 6 years, and I'm going to go and try to make sure that I'm fighting against the good old boys for all of us instead of those that have the money and those at the top. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. And now we will move on to the questions. Question responses are 1 minute. Some of the questions are 2-part questions. I will read them in parts. Question number 1. What are the top 2 issues facing constituents in your district, and what legislation would you champion to address them? We're going to begin with Mary Young.
Thank you for the question. I will definitely continue to champion issues around economic stability. We have worked on many of these issues in the past several sessions. Affordability of housing and really in our local community, we can see the efforts that they're making to make sure that they are accessing the grants that the state have provided to increase affordable housing. And the other issue really is continuing to focus on education, making sure that schools are safe, that we are achieving greater quality as we infuse cash into schools in this last session.
Next is Mark Matthews.
Yes, I having being a retired physician, I think it's safe to say that healthcare in terms of affordability and access is a problem that everyone can be concerned about. And I think it would be good to continue to work at seeing how we can reduce the cost and improve accessibility, especially in rural areas. But it's going to take a lot of people working together and trying to expand our workforce, expand telehealth. There are a lot of options, but that will take a lot of people working together. And also, and I agree with Mary, how important education is for us now and into the future, and seeing how we can improve funding to education so it's more equitable throughout the state.
Next is Ryan Gonzalez.
Could you repeat the question real fast for me, please?
What are the top 2 issues facing constituents in your district, and what legislation would you champion to address them?
Yeah, so the top 2 issues that I hear at the door all the time in the community is the economy, affordability, affordable housing, and crime. So I was out walking on doors last week by Far Park, and a lot of the people there are concerned with crime. They have a lot of homeless problems, especially at the park where they're afraid to take their kids. There's syringes, defecations, vandalism of broken windows, same thing with the Burger King on 11th Avenue. And a lot of it, it's more of a mental health issue. And so we can't pass the burden on to law enforcement to fix those issues. I think we need to have trained professionals to do so. And we also need to make it easier for the law enforcement to do their job. I feel like a lot of the legislation that's been coming out in recent years has pretty much done more harm than good in the name of social justice to pretty much put law enforcement their hands behind their back. Affordability, when it comes to housing, you're seeing a lot of regulations and fees go up because of that. So I would work to repeal fees and regulations that drive the cost up, specifically environmental legislation when it impacts affordable housing, and protecting Tabor to make sure people get their tax refunds and not being used as a pawn for other people.
Thank you. Scott Bright.
Thanks. It's like Ryan, the top 2 issues I'm hearing from constituents as I knock on doors is the cost of living and the lack of safety in their communities. I believe that we can make safer communities by having criminals actually do the time for the crimes that they commit. I believe that drug possession has been, the penalties around drug possession have been too light and not often implemented. And so we can definitely beef that up. And we can make our cost of living much more affordable, right, by reducing the regulations that far exceed the basic level of safety that they're designed for, as well as protecting Tabor and reducing property tax burden for all Coloradoans.
Go.
Thank you. Ryan Armagost.
Thank you. I have to agree in the contacts that I've had with my constituents and even through emails and phone calls, it's been resounding feedback on public safety and cost of living. As far as the public safety aspect is concerned, I've taken a serious focus on mental health and addiction treatment, recovery, and diversion. And I think I would love to continue doing that, finding ways of funding our jurisdictions and our judicial districts and their ability to help divert people into treatment so that we have less recidivism. We aren't overburdening our jails and prisons, but we're also keeping violent criminals behind bars where they're not going to be affecting or harming people, victimizing people in the public. As far as cost of living, I would definitely be strong behind getting taxes and fees reduced for people. less taxes, less fees, and then getting people the money that they need back on their overtaxing through the taxpayers' Bill of Rights.
Thank you. And Matt Johnston?
Yes, so like I said before, the number one issue that I see is home ownership. And I'm not just talking about rent and recovery for rent. It's about getting people into a home that they can purchase, live in with their families. One of the big issues when people say cut taxes, one of the biggest taxes that a lot of my constituents face now, because I currently represent people, so that's the only way you do have constituents, just to be very clear, is the constituents that I have. It is the metro district taxes. It's the other taxes coming from these false governmental entities. It's not just the state and the property taxes that we hear about a lot. It's the other taxes that are added onto it. The other main thing that we need to be very clear about is what it is, where these costs are coming from. It's coming from a mixture of some bad governmental policy, and those are the top making record profits. We can pretend as if that's not happening, but it is, and it's in the statistics. So I want to make sure both of those are covered and our wages are raised. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2 is similar, so I'll go a little bit slower. What are the top 2 concerns the state faces in the 2025 legislative session that will need to be addressed, and what are your recommendations for legislation to deal with them? And we will begin with Mark Matthews.
I don't think those top priorities would be very different than what we just talked about, as you mentioned. So we do have to decide in terms of taxes how to best fairly tax everyone, and so no one feels like they're being ripped off. But we are taxing enough to support our communities, to support the mental health efforts that Ryan mentioned, to support making sure that we have public schools that are well resourced and safe schools and modern schools. And then we also have to look at how do we work together to bring about affordable housing. And I think we can work together to achieve these goals.
Thank you. Ryan Gonzalez.
So one of the issues that the legislature is facing is obviously a budget shortfall. Obviously, they're mismanaging the money, and they're creating a lot of these offices that pretty much have people appointed that were never elected to begin with. And these offices are being proven ineffective. Example is the Office of Saving People Money on Healthcare. Health insurance premiums are supposed to go up about 5% next year for pretty much everybody. That affects people with senior citizens. So we got to figure out something with the budget. There was an audit done that they found that they misappropriated over $60 million in the budget. So that money is owed to taxpayers. So again, they have to find some sort of cut for that. And then also just making sure that they do their jobs. I feel like a lot of what the legislature is doing is they're doing stuff that is in the jurisdiction of local municipalities and leaving it to the local people to solve those problems, and only if they need help, without having cookie cutter policies, would definitely also make things a lot better instead of applying just policies universally across the state.
Thank you. Mary Young.
The budget shortfall really has several prongs. And I have to say that the bipartisan Joint Budget Committee takes on a Herculean act when they balance the budget, because we are one of the few states that is required to have a balanced budget. And one of the big factors in the shortfall this year is the change in Medicaid funding, which occurred everyone who was part of Medicaid was frozen and stayed in Medicaid until the pandemic ended, and that happened this spring. And people have anticipate because of our aging population and our healthcare needs. And so we will have to solve that to fund the programs that we have committed to in education and healthcare and behavioral healthcare and all these important programs.
Thank you. Next, Matt Johnston.
Yeah, I think that one of the keys for this election and this upcoming session is that the day after the election on November 6th, I want to make sure that this entire panel and everyone that does run for office admits that the election results were fair and clear. There's folks sitting here right now, and there's folks that are across the state that are saying, we don't know if the election was fair in the past, and we don't know if it will be again. And I want to make it very clear that no matter what the results are, so the first step to this legislative session is agreeing that the election was ran clearly and fairly, and that the results were correct. And there is no conspiracy saying that it didn't happen, as people that someone has said on this panel before on a previous election. So I think that's very, very crucial to make sure that we keep the longevity of our government, and that we make sure that the voters and the constituents know that those representing them were fairly chosen. Thanks.
Ryan Armagost.
Thank you. I would say, along with the last question, I think public safety is definitely a big one throughout the state. And the other issue that we're now seeing throughout our state is on illegal immigration. I think between the two, it's more than a public safety issue. The public safety side of it, we are number 3 in the country. We're the 3rd most dangerous state. That was recently rated. Another one was we're in the top 3 for cocaine use. We're also in the top 3 for fentanyl overdoses. We need to take a harder, more no-nonsense approach toward our public safety through our addiction and mental health treatment. As far as our immigration situation, we have people that are coming here with student visas and work visas that are working hard toward their citizenship and being deported on simple technicalities, while we have people that are coming here illegally and committing crimes while they are here that are being more protected than the people that are here with student and work visas. And we need to change that in our state.
Thank you. And Scott Bright.
Thank you for the question. The top 2 issues facing the state of Colorado, number 1 is the budget shortfall. And in addition to that, there are several in second place. Insurance costs for the people of Colorado are just skyrocketing. Insurance options are being limited. We need to talk to our insurance commissioner and find out if he can incentivize more folks or more options to come to the state of Colorado to give people more options and lower the cost of insurance. Like Ryan said, Colorado is the 3rd most dangerous state. Fentanyl deaths are up 800% since the Democrats decriminalized it in 2019. Really feel like we need to get a grip on that. We really need to care for the people of Colorado. I believe those are the issues facing Colorado right now.
Thank you. Next question. What should the state government do to provide an equitable, quality public education for all children, pre-K through 12th grade? And do you support or oppose Constitutional Amendment 80, school choice? We'll begin with Ryan Armagost.
Thank you. As far as the school choice issue goes, I'm 100% behind that. I think we need to really expand on what we're looking at for school choice. We need to understand that just like our state, every county is different. Every family is different. Every child learns differently. We have to be able to afford children and their parents the right to put their child in the school where they know they can learn best, whether that be a public school, a charter school, a private school, home school, religious school, whatever the case may be. And we need to let them have that choice. Universally, we need to have school choice. We also need to have, it's not in this amendment, or this proposition, but we need to have education savings accounts. We need to be able to let the money follow the student, no matter which direction the student goes, to get the best education that they can get. And I'm sorry, I don't think I have time for the other part of the question.
Thank you. Next, Matt Johnston.
Sorry, it's frozen. Give me one sec. Yeah, Zoom just froze on me. Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, well, that's okay with me. Let me see if it's spinning and give me one second. Well, here, if you don't mind, I'm happy to respond in audio and then I'll try to reload this if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. I don't believe I can see the time, so just yell at me if I talk too much. But
I'll give you
yeah, no,
one.
I oppose Amendment 80 for one crucial reason is that it takes away money from our public schools. I'm a varsity football coach here in the city of Brighton, and it's already an underserved community with underserved schools. I don't mind if the choice of your education is definitely crucial, but the choice of where the money goes, we should have cathedrals for our schools in the public system the way the money is, and I'd like the money gets spent better, but to take money out of it is definitely could be hurtful to the schools and the students that are there now. And a lot of them, when you say choice in this neck of the woods where we live, it's harder to say that it is choice because it's the transportation to get to some of these schools that some of us don't have. Not all of us are third generational wealth. Many of us have to work to both my wife and I both work multiple jobs just to survive. And for us to take our 8 and 3-year-old across the district to try to be in a school, that's problematic, if not impossible. And so I definitely want us to be aware of that factor before we just go talking about it choice, because it's not
it's
just
time,
the
please.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Next will be Scott Bright.
Awesome, thank you. The question is, what can we do to increase quality educational options for families in Colorado? I really believe that we should incentivize high quality options, and we should make folks aware of those options, what they are, and where they can go to get them. I believe we need to get dollars to the classroom, and we need to minimize the admin costs that are funded through increases in tuition increases to public funding to public schools. I believe we need to increase options for students to go to trade school or vocational school to get that technical training that they're after. I feel like one track does not fit all, and we need to offer those options to families all over. I am in support of Prop 80 because I believe the constitutional right to school choice should be offered to all families. Thanks.
Thank you. Mary Young.
We need to continue to fund public education so we can really pay teachers what they're worth. When I moved here, Colorado was in the middle of the pack for teacher salaries. We're now at the bottom, and that is not sustainable. So when we talk about choice, as been mentioned, taking these funds from public education really could produce a crisis. And in addition, I'm the product of private schools, first grade through college education. And really, we will have to look at what happens with children of disabilities, children of different cultural diversity, to make sure we maintain those rights of children to access an appropriate education. So I'm against 80.
Thank you. Next is Mark Matthews.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'm very much opposed to Amendment 80. I do not want to support any private school or religious school. There is a separation of church and state. And And I'd also think that we need to really look at what has happened in other states where this option has been passed, and has it been worthwhile? And for the most part, it has not. As Mary said, it will take away monies from the public schools and leave those people who are not able to go to the private school or to a religious school. What do we do for them? I don't think that's right. So I think we need to work at ways of increasing the funding for our public education, and because all students deserve a high quality education.
Thank you. Ryan Gonzalez.
I am the product of public education. I went through the public education system and I had great teachers, and I'm still support school choice. School choice does not mean the eradication of public schools. Let's make that perfectly clear. They can choose to put their children in public schools or they can choose not to. The choice is theirs. That being said, I do believe as taxpayer dollars, they have the right to have a say where their money goes when it comes to their child's education. Taking that decision away from the people and giving it to the state is absolutely wrong. It is not the proper rule of government. And I believe we need to work on cutting back excessive administration in public schools that pays for salaries when instead that money could be going directly to the student. You're seeing a growth exponentially in school administration when the money should be going towards teachers, should be going towards students, and we could be helping our public education system that way by making sure the funds go directly to the student and to our teachers.
Thank you. Question number 4. Do you believe that Colorado's election system is secure and safe to ensure fair and democratic elections? In your opinion, are there any changes needed to ensure election security? Part 2 of this is, how would you ensure all voters have fair and equal access to the ballot? And we will begin with Scott Bright.
Oh, thank you. I believe the election system is fair and safe. Absolutely, I do. I have toured the Weld County election process through the primary system. I've watched all the folks that are involved in that process. I've watched all the safety and security of it. I firmly believe that the election process in Weld County is definitely safe. I can speak to that firsthand. Are there any changes we can do? Well, we can always, as with any system, we can always look inside and say, are we doing the right thing? Are there things that we can do to make it better? Are there safety protocols we can put in? Sure. Let's always take a look at it and see if we can make the system better. Given that, I'm very secure and very safe in what we're going to see this November.
Thank you. Ryan Armagost.
Thank you. And I have to agree with Scott on a few levels of this. I think on our county levels, I can speak for Larimer and Weld counties that I represent. We have a very great couple of clerks in both counties. They do very well at making sure that we have the cleanest voter rolls that we can. The only downside, I think, is when things get to the state level, there is an uncertainty and a lack of transparency that I think is very necessary. I think we need to have a lot more transparency for our public, and public needs to have faith in our government as far as our elections are concerned. So I don't think they are completely safe and secure and fair. Unfortunately, this isn't a partisan thing, although sometimes it comes out to be a partisan thing. No matter which direction the pendulum is swung in any race, Democrat and Republicans have complained about voter and election integrity. So this is something that we both need to work together on across party lines to make sure we have the most transparent, secure system possible.
Thank you. Matt Johnston.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to hear my opponent actually says the elections are fair this time, because in 2020, he said they weren't openly, said that there was cheating, that it did not happen. And I'd also like to make everyone aware that our district goes into Weld County and Adams County. What he said was he thinks that the Weld County elections are safe. I'm glad. I hope he also thinks Adams counties and all in our state are not just safe and fair, but it's one of the safest, fairest election processes in the United States. My opponents also said that mail-in ballots are a problem. Mail-in ballots are the key to creating that ability for other voters from all walks of life to be able to vote easily and have that accessibility that was asked in the second part of the question. The main thing we need to do to secure our elections, in my opinion, is to make sure, like I said before when I mentioned this, that everyone admits that the elections are done correctly and that regardless of the results, that they admit that the election was done fairly. Not today, but every day, 2020 all the way to November 6th. Thanks.
Mark Matthews?
Yes, I have had the opportunity to work as an election judge 4 times here in Weld County. And as Ryan mentioned, our clerk, Carly Cups, she's terrific. So I believe that election integrity extends throughout the whole state. And I believe the biggest actual problem is is voter suppression, really. Whereas under the guise of making elections more fair, voter suppression is going on. And maybe not in our state, but throughout the country. But I think we have a wonderful system in our state, our mail system, so everyone can take the time they need to redo the research. And so I'm very confident in our election system here in Colorado.
Thank you. Brian Gonzalez.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Do you believe that Colorado's election system is secure and safe to ensure fair and democratic elections? In your opinion, are there any changes needed to ensure election security? And the second part of that is, how would you ensure all voters have fair and equal access to the ballot?
Yeah, so I do believe that our system here is secure, fair. I trust my county clerk and recorder. I will agree with Mark on one thing. Carly is terrific and she has bipartisan support. I have been invited to audit that place and tour everything for myself to see the start from start to finish. And I can tell you, I vote early. So when I get my ballot in, I drop it in a drop box. I know when it's picked up. I know when it's counted. I get notifications. And I know that Carly would shut down any funny business if it were to happen. That being said, people need to understand that our elections are managed by our clerk and recorder. It is not the Secretary of State. There's a big misconception there. But I do believe we can obviously make sure that we continually make sure our voter rolls are accurate. They're making sure that they're correct addresses, people along the such, and also voter ID. It's not racist. Mexico, again, has voter ID and it works out well. And so if you think it's discriminatory or voter suppression, then you're calling Mexico voter suppressionists as well for the people that vote there. So we can make it better. Definitely things we can do, among other things.
Thank you. Mary Young.
Well, I agree with my colleagues here. I find our election process to be with the greatest integrity. Our mail-in ballot system is considered, if not the best, one of the best in the country. And it really does provide access for voters. And I hear it all the time when I'm talking to voters, how much they appreciate the accessibility of getting the ballot in the mail and being able to drop it off at a drop box and not have to worry about timing their return ballot. I applaud our county clerk. She is marvelous. And I too have taken a tour and see the intensive processes they do to make sure that those signatures are correct. Any system can always have improvement, but we have a very excellent system now.
Thank you. Next question. What will you do to support and ensure equal access to resources such as food, housing security, educational opportunities, and so forth for all people, including the Latino and immigrant populations in your House Senate district? And what would you do to address immigration in Colorado? And we will start with Matt Johnston.
Yeah, the key to making sure everyone has food security is making sure the wages are correct. Once again, my opponent said there is no wage gap. There's not only a wage gap between those at the top, those with third generational wealth, but there's also a wage gap between those of color, women, versus a white male in the same job. And that is not me saying that as some kind of rhetorical process. That is a statistical variance that we see consistently that we need to make sure we stop. And we need to make sure we stop people from saying that it doesn't exist, because the underprivileged are the ones that we're here to serve at the highest level, because oftentimes they are the actual minority in our situation that we're here to govern and help. The reality of what needs to happen overall is we need to come together and forget about spitting out conservative or liberal talking points, and we need to realize that that is the key. If people were paid enough, this would not be an issue, and we need to make sure that they're paid enough, and any way possible. Thank you.
Mary Young.
Thanks for this question too. I want to say that I see myself as a public servant, not a politician. And so these are the kind of issues I resonate with. And food security is reflected in some of the bills that I have done and also supported for others. We do have an issue of new people to our community, and I work with the Immigration Resource Center to discuss and identify what is needed. And I've talked to the Weld Food Bank, and we identified that we need more resources for food. And so we need to continue to work on that issue. There's issues of people who are new being able to access work. And we need to be able to expedite that process, because we know we have many jobs going unfilled. And we need also to make sure that there's housing for people who are in this population.
Time, please, Mary.
Thank you.
Next is Ryan Armagost.
Thank you. After being able to tour the Weld County Food Bank, I saw the desperate need that they have for federal funding and state funding. Right now, the federal funding is what we need. The Farm Act and everything that we have on the federal level should be able to supplement and help keep our food banks full, to keep those people that are food insecure on the secure side of that. Another thing I would see as far as our state is concerned is finding ways to enable and empower people to get out of food insecurity, whether it be assisting with jobs, any kind of therapy that they need vocationally or occupationally, getting people back into work and getting the ability to put food on the table and provide for their families. As far as immigration in our state, I think the one thing that we need to do is realize that we have undocumented citizens here. We also have immigrants that are here on work and student visas that need that help. We need to worry about our citizens and those people that are here to work and go to school before we're focusing on undocumented citizens that we can't afford.
Next, Brian Gonzalez.
Thank you for your question. As a Hispanic man myself who came from Mexican immigrants, I can tell you that I hear the situation a lot. I can tell you they are not happy with prioritizing undocumented immigrants over people who are here law-abiding, whether it's residents or in the process of becoming citizens. They've worked hard, and we got to make sure we have accessible resources for those people. I'm very open to giving work permits for people who are here and don't have any documentation, making sure we get them the resources they need, but also making sure that we look after our citizens and their well-being. I don't want to make it seem where we're pinning, minorities against each other when it comes to resources, but also making sure we have programs accessible to teach them skills, right? Trade, vocational, working with their hands, electrical, apprenticeships, things like that, that we can make sure are working and getting in the right direction so they get higher wages and higher paid jobs with benefits.
Thank you. Scott Bright.
Thanks for the question. A big part of being able to afford food and housing is being able to work in the first place, and providing childcare for low-income families, as we've had a history of doing throughout our entire career. Also, being a director of the Head Start program of Weld County has given me a chance to meet with families of all sorts of backgrounds. And they come to you with all sorts of issues, whether they be health issues or mental health issues, food issues, housing issues, and we're able to refer each and every one of those to the proper place to make sure that those needs are taken care of. There are systems in place to do this. We just need to make sure we connect the dots for those families. I really believe in that. And having served in Rotary on multiple projects with the food bank, we've done that work. I also serve on the Weld Trust Grant Advisory Council, and we shift hundreds of thousands of dollars to these programs every month, every quarter. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mark Matthews.
Yes, my wife and I have had the opportunity to volunteer at the Weld County Food Bank, and actually with our small farm, we've delivered a lot of produce to there. And the work they do there is simply incredible. But it is really, hopefully, just a stopgap measure. As Matt brought up, we have to work at. Trying to address the income disparities in trying to get people education and jobs. But then we also need to work at building community partnerships between immigrant organization and local government and businesses that can tone down the rhetoric some and try to have people working together for the betterment of our whole community. So I think we're capable of doing that.
Thank you. Question number 6, and this will have a second part that's going to be from the audience. What are your positions on issues related to women's health care, reproductive rights, and a constitutional amendment protecting the right to abortion in Colorado? And the audience part of this question: should a minor survivor of rape be able to have an abortion if she becomes pregnant? And we will begin with Ryan Gonzalez.
So I am not afraid to say I'm pro-life, but I also believe that there should be exceptions. And as such, that would be an exception if she chooses to do so with the consulting of her and her doctor. She should be able to. I feel like the state should not intervene in that kind of stuff or any other person that's not her and her doctor and her family.
Okay, Scott Bright.
Thanks for the question. I support life. I also respect that there's a diversity of opinions on this issue. I'd like to see us to come to some consensus on what unites most people. I believe that limits on later term abortions, and I also believe in no taxpayer funding of abortions. I believe any limits on abortion should ensure exceptions for rape and incest and the life of the mother. What I don't support is a bill that was passed by Colorado Democrats a couple of years ago that allows abortion up till the moment of birth. That's unconscionable. Regarding the question from the audience, I feel for that parent. I have a program, a high school program, where we have childcare for infants and toddlers for mothers who are 13, 14, and 15 years old. We want to see them be successful. We want to see them stay in school. We want to see them have a successful life. And we provide the resources for that to happen. Should they be allowed? Should that be allowed? Then yes, I believe that should be.
Okay. Next is Mark Matthews.
Yes, I believe that a woman has the right to choose, and that I think she has the right of autonomy over her own body. And I don't believe that the government should be able to step in and tell her what to do with what's going on for her. So I believe that it extends even to the young person who became pregnant. I think she is the one who determines what health care she received.
Thank you. Ryan Armagost.
Thank you. For the first question, I think we can address the fact that when what happened with the U.S. Supreme Court, it was pushed back to the states, and this is exactly what is happening. What happens from that decision is the state pushes it to the voters, which is exactly what we need to rely on. The voters need to make this decision of how we handle this in our state. So whatever the voters decide is what we will have in our state. plain and simple. I am pro-life, but I would agree with whatever the voters come up with to make that our state's policy to move forward. As far as the other question, I think the big thing that is unfortunate is when we're talking about choice, if a person in dire straits, completely overwhelmed, an unexpected pregnancy, if you Google unexpected pregnancy right now, you will see Planned Parenthood. First and only option is Planned Parenthood. We need to offer pregnancy centers for people to get the resources they need, the talks and therapy that they need, and to know whether or not they're ready to mother a child.
Thank you. Mary Young.
I lost my connection. Could you repeat the question?
Bet. What are your positions on issues related to women's health care, reproductive rights, and a constitutional amendment protecting the right to abortion in Colorado? And the audience portion was, should a minor survivor of rape be able to have an abortion if she becomes pregnant? Mary, you're...
Yeah, I'm definitely in support of a woman's right to access reproductive health care without government interference. I am very proud to be in a state that is maintaining women's rights as they face sometimes serious illness around a wanted pregnancy. So we have to continue to support a woman's right to have control over her own health care. And as far as the issue of a minor, I actually lived through that. As an educator, I worked with a young woman who couldn't access abortion care, and she had to bring, she was a minor and had to bring the pregnancy to term, which really was not what she wanted at all. And I do want to say that we know that there's definitely negative outcomes for women. They can't access abortion care when they want it.
Okay, and Matt Johnston?
Yeah, thank you. You can't just run for office and change all of your opinions, as I just heard from my opponent. When the question was asked previously in his life, he said, I'd like to talk to people that were babies of a rape victim, insinuating that they were forced to have the baby. I have to tell you, this is not a right of just women. It's the right, it's a self-evident right. There's not many of those, but a self-evident right towards having control over what goes in and out of your body should be a crucial turning point for us as not only a society, but as human beings. And I'm fed up with these lines that I just heard from a few panelists here saying, yes, here, yes, there. No, self-evident right is the right that is given to us by God, and I'm not going to allow us to move past that. What goes in and outside of your body, it should be up to us as human beings.
Thank you. Next question. How can you, as a legislator, work to end the epidemic of gun violence in Colorado? And we will begin with Mary Young.
I have consistently voted for reasonable gun safety laws, especially around trying to keep children away from guns. And I think many people always associate gun violence, especially in school shootings, with mental health problems. And we really know that in the majority of cases, people with mental health and behavioral problems are more likely to be the victims of this kind of happening. So it is important to increase access to mental and behavioral health, but it is also important to provide safeguards so that people, children and youth don't have access to these weapons.
You, Mark Matthews.
Yes, I think when talking about this, I think the emphasis should not be so much on guns, but by reducing violence. And I think if we focus that way, we may be able to make more strides in reducing the violence. So, as was mentioned in the question, there is an epidemic of gun violence, and it is the number one killer of our children. Now, just imagine it's the number one killer of our children, gun violence. So I think it is a public health problem, and I think we need to really focus that way with gun owners and those who don't own guns, trying to work together to reduce the number of people who are killed each year in our state, with that often the highest number being those in suicide. So we can work together. I think we can make this better.
Thank you. Ryan Gonzalez.
I just think it's funny that people want to raise the ages of purchasing a gun to 21, but these are the same people that want 16-year-olds to vote. There's no consistency, and I feel like there should be a uniform when it comes to these type of decisions. The fact is, we don't teach people to respect life is the problem. None of these shootings were caused by people who had concealed carry permits or who actually were law-abiding citizens. All of these people were reported, and I invite you guys to look at the statistics. A lot of these people from the mass shootings were in fact reported earlier to law enforcement, and law enforcement didn't do a thing until something happened. So we have to hold those people accountable. We have to make sure that we have reporting mechanisms in place, and we have to also make sure we teach our young obviously gun safety at a young age to make sure that they're aware. And a lot of these gun-free zones are just pretty much draw attention to these people who want to cause harms. It's not the guns. If people want to kill people, they'll use something else. They'll use bombs, they'll use grenades. You see it with the pagers happening overseas. These people were creative. They'll use knives, among other things.
Thank you. Scott Bright.
Thanks for the question. Gun violence. Let's be clear. People pull the trigger. Guns don't pull the triggers on themselves. It's most often that criminals with mental health issues are the ones who are in those positions. Yet we keep those criminals on the streets and we don't do anything about it. We incentivize them to get out of jail as quickly as possible and repeat those offenses. I feel like if we can get those people who are prone to pull those triggers to do the crime, do the time for the crime, I feel like we can drastically reduce violence as a whole, and including gun violence. Cashless bail systems just encourage people to get right back on the streets. So I feel like we need to address the people, the behaviors, and the mental health issues that exist with those folks who are committing those crimes.
Thank you. Matt Johnston.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually agree with my opponent here. There's a misnomer that the ability to have the gun forces you to do anything with it that is violent. And the people that are actually affected by gun violence are oftentimes not the mass shootings that we're talking about. It's the everyday that happens in low-income neighborhoods. So oftentimes it's a societal issue inside of a low-income neighborhood that is forceful violence through cyclical behavior. So I also want to say, I feel like the Second Amendment was stolen from us long ago. We don't have the ability to fight our own government with our own weapons because we don't have the same weapon choices or ability. So we can't use that as much as we would want to as gun owners. I also have seen a falsity with the idea of mental health support when it comes to this issue. A lot of people have had mental health support bills blocked in the past, and it's due to this issue that I want to reopen those mental health bills back up in the legislature next year. Thank you.
Ryan Armagost.
Thank you. And I would have to say that there is not a gun violence epidemic. I would say there is a mental illness epidemic. And like some people have mentioned already on this panel, the cause of death that we're talking about with our youth is caused by mental illness. The guns have always been there. I grew up in Northern Colorado where there were multiple guns in every vehicle, some on clear display in a gun rack in the back of the truck for students that went hunting before and after school. Never once did any of them ever have a squabble or anything they wanted or needed to settle with the firearm. Everything was handled with words. Sometimes there were fights, but it was never handled with a firearm. That has changed with the generations. We have to address that, the underlying issue of mental illness and mental health. And we really have to reform our state's mental health treatment program and department altogether. We really need to work on getting better mental health treatment and options, especially for our youth. And we definitely need to harden our schools and protect our kids that we hold most dear.
Thank you. Next question. Do you believe the state legislature should help Colorado move away from fossil fuels to renewable energy? Why or why not? And what actions do you recommend to develop Colorado's energy sector? And we will begin with Ryan Armagost.
Thank you. I think first and foremost, talking about our Colorado oil and gas, we have and have had the cleanest oil and gas production in Colorado because of legislation and restrictions that have been put on our Colorado oil and gas. The part about that is we've also lost a significant portion, especially in Weld County, of our oil and gas that is taken away to the degree of $5 billion of revenue for our state in 1 year. That's horrible. So we need those options. But with those options, there are options of renewable energy, but we don't need to rely on any one form of energy, especially when it's something that isn't sustainable and isn't reliable during the different seasons in Colorado. And also, if there's no sunlight, if there's no wind. So we can also focus on nuclear energy. We need to have different options to get people the best options for power that they have, no matter what the situation is or what may or may not happen in our Colorado and our seasons.
Thank you. Matt Johnston?
Yeah, I'm a capitalist, and I feel like we all are here sitting here, and the move to renewable energies is undeniable over time because that is where there is money to be made for for-profit companies and for the workforce. However, we need to be very careful about how fast we go down some path to remove the work environment of our oil and gas community. And the reason I was a former coal miner. I worked at multiple coal mines and coal-fired power plants throughout the state. And I ended up having to remove my crew. And then the next day I was called into the office and told I am no longer employed. And what that did was I had to go back to school, start a new career. Luckily, I was young enough. I didn't have kids and a full family yet. But my wife, girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, we had big struggles and ended up living in a Section 8 housing, having a very tough time. And I don't want to do it so fast that we remove the worker from their own environment in their own hometowns. So we need to be very careful about how we do it. The profitability and the future of renewables is there, and it's not going away. Thanks.
Thank you. Scott Bright.
Would you mind repeating the second part of that question again?
Sure. What actions do you recommend to develop Colorado's energy sector?
Okay. Thank you. I believe that Colorado has an incredibly vast source of clean energy right here under our feet. That energy is the most affordable and efficient that it could be to provide those resources for those families who need it. Everywhere I go, I hear about cost of living, and a big part of that is what it costs to heat and light their houses. And get basic heat is a important function for most families. And so addressing those issues, providing those families with the most efficient source of energy to heat their homes is incredibly important. Also, as we move away from the oil and gas industry, we have to understand that the massive implications that will have on our school funding. Most of oil and gas funds our schools right now to a large extent. And we need to take that into account as we eliminate that resource potentially. And if any energy source is viable, it shouldn't have to be propped up by taxpayer funds.
Thank you. Mary Young.
I agree with many of the answers that have been given. I think we need to continue to explore energy production methods, solar, wind, geothermal, hydrogen, but we need to recognize that achieving the goals of being able to provide energy to this state will take time. We have to recognize that. And we also, I want to honor the oil and gas industry in all it does for my community, boosting the pay of people, bringing them up into a middle class lifestyle. And we need to continue to work as a state to work cooperatively as we move forward with all of these different forms of energy production, recognizing how oil and gas really meets our state's needs at this time.
Thank you. Mark Matthews.
Yes, I guess first off, I think we do have to, at least I think we have to recognize that climate change is real. That for future generations, we need to move toward clean energy and away from burning fossil fuels. But we can't flip a switch. We do have to move as rapidly as we can, but we're still dependent on oil and gas, and we still have to support their workers. And as we move toward cleaner energy solutions through whatever incentives we can put in to retrain them and so use their expertise in terms of bringing a clean energy to our state. But as has been mentioned, it has to be done gradually. But how gradually is the question.
Ryan Gonzalez.
Just throwing that out there, my opponent's on record for saying she banned fracking. So House District 50 encompasses a lot of oil and gas people here who know a lot of them are concerned about their industry. And obviously, I just wanted to let it be known I will not vote against their industry because I know how important it is. Scott all said it best when he said that Colorado and Weld County lead in clean energy when it comes to natural gas. It doesn't matter what we do as a state if China is the biggest emitter of CO2 in the world. So we could do all we want, but the fraction of what we do won't be good enough to what we want to sustain for our climate change goals, right? I'm a big supporter of renewable energy all across the field, hydropower, solar, wind. And in recent years, Republicans brought forth a bill to categorize nuclear energy as a clean form of energy, but it was killed in committee by Democrats. So we are working to explore that. And there are ways to transition to renewable energy that will take time. And I know oil and gas is obviously making sure they do have mechanisms in place to do that. But all forms of energy are great.
Thank you. Our last question is going to be an audience question. It has been mentioned that we need a new generation of leaders at this time. Do you think this is a valid concern? If so, how would you propose to train new leaders? And we will begin with Mark Matthews.
Well, interesting to begin with me, being one of the older members. However, I fully agree that we need that transition to a younger leadership, younger voices, younger minds. I think that would be very important to do. But as was mentioned earlier, again, I'm brand new to this, and as I think the other panelists would agree, it's not an easy thing to put yourself out there. I don't know what could be developed to help smooth the entrance into the political process. The money part of it, the exposure. I think there are ways, but being brand new, I'm just learning the ropes now and sometimes feeling I'm being bounced into the ropes.
Thank you. Ryan Gonzalez.
So I agree with the question. I will say though that I am completely against age discrimination. I have met plenty of sane 80, 90-year-olds who are not in office, who are mentally coherent and are able to put together a sentence, and they're normal people like you and I. I also believe that we should give our youth a voice, like me as a millennial, as a Hispanic millennial, to make sure that our interests and our voices are represented in government. I will say, though, that it goes both ways. There's a lot of people who look at youth younger and they hit us on lack of experience, life experience, or just youth, right? But again, I don't want to go down that slippery slope when it comes to age. If you have the qualifications, if you're able to do the job, that's what I'm looking for. Age is just something that's pretty much on the back burner for me. If they're able to present a case, a compelling case for me, then I'm all for it. It doesn't matter the age of the candidate.
Thank you. Mary Young?
I think that really one should look at the quality of the candidate and whether they represent the issues that you want to see moved forward on policy. Obviously, you're always going to judge a candidate about whether you think they have the capacity and ability to be a successful representative. Obviously, I have been in my career representing House District 50. But I think that it also reflects the issue of how legislatures have become more inclusive. We used to be all attorneys. Now we're doctors, lawyers, educators, psychologists, police officers. That needs to continue too, where we have a representative voice and that really reflects the community.
Next, Matt Johnston.
Yeah, a lot of good said here on this issue, and I hate the idea that age is the deciphering factor. That is not a truth. I agree. I guess when the millennial generation has been demeaned at such a high level, and now the next generation coming up is now feeling the effects of it, and the next generation below me, I'm a millennial, and right below me, they have a big issue coming because they can't afford to live in their own home. My brother-in-law is a police officer, and he's had to live with his parents saving money just to afford a home. So yeah, he's pretty much forcefully not feeling good about the political sphere. And there's also the partisanship factor. It's this divisive rhetoric, the partisanship saying, I'm a conservative, I am a liberal. Like all of this has made it to where this very educated generation that can't afford their own home goes, I don't want to get involved in that. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope we can fix this because it's a big problem. Thanks for the question.
Ryan Armagast.
Thank you. I think generally we're hearing a lot of the same, just that it doesn't come down to the age. I think it comes down to diversity. I think having the ability to have diverse people in a legislature is important. For our legislature, we do have attorneys. I'm thankful that we don't have all attorneys. We do have doctors, veterans. We have veterinarians. We have all different walks of life and all different ages. I think the one thing important to realize is we also have term limits. So we don't have people that are just completely comfortable and not doing anything for their district. I think of it like sports. When we have a football team that isn't performing well, we look at who's not performing well and we replace them in a draft. And when we replace somebody in a draft, we know we are taking a risk on what we're going to get, but you have to put your bets in where you know the product is getting done. I've run bipartisan bills and I plan to keep doing that. I think that's one of the things that we all need to focus on is success.
Thank you. And Scott Bright.
Awesome. Thanks for the question. A new generation of leaders. I was confused a little bit about this because we have term limits. And so that obviously turns the entire field over every 8 years or so. So I feel like we're getting a new generation of leaders constantly. And training them, I think, is the biggest issue is having folks that come in that know how to lead a group, that know how to have a conversation, that know how to work with other folks that have differing opinions. As the chair of the Early Childhood Education Association, I've done a lot of that, trying to bring folks together. Working with the Department of Early Childhood as the Rules Advisory Council chair, working my way through that process, I've learned a lot about how to work with other groups of people. Having been the Greeley Downtown Rotary president, managing all sorts of projects that have come together there. It doesn't matter what per partisan politics there are there. We need to lead a bipartisan effort to have great leaders. And I feel like we're on our path.
Thank you. We will now have closing comments, beginning with Senate District 13. Matt Johnston will go first.
Yes, I just once again, I want to say thank you all so much for being here, including the candidates, including my opponent. It is very hard to do this. And I want to be very clear once again, and I've said it in multiple ways, but the partisanship and the divisive behavior that happens because of it, we have to be clear how much that's affecting our overall governance and our overall ability for us to not only run for office, but those that want to run for office. We have to also make sure that the good old boys club culture that has been created in multiple levels of our government is completely taken out of the ability to govern. And I'm just really proud that I'm really proud that the league has set this up and let us speak, and also the way that it was done. I've been part of these before, and I have to tell you, this was done very well, where we each got to speak, and none of us spoke over each other. That was good. The debates that we see in the national world have not been like that. So I'm proud of all of us, and thanks for letting us do this.
Scott Bright.
Thank you. Closing comments. Well, I'm new to running for public office, and it's definitely been eye-opening for me. But I can tell you that this is an incredible opportunity, incredible experience. Having been a part of designing from the ground up the universal preschool program that we enjoy today, I see some fixes that are definitely needed in that process. I also see folks struggling with cost of living issues. I see folks struggling with crime issues in the towns that they live in, and I'm here to help. I'm here to do whatever I can, and I'm here to work with everyone across the aisle, all 100 members of the legislature, to find solutions for families in Northern Colorado. Thanks for having us today.
House District 64 candidates, Mark Matthews.
Well, I would like to echo what has been said. I really appreciate the League of Women Voters putting this together. I appreciate the way it's been done and the way the questions have been asked, and I totally appreciate the other members of this team, who the candidates who have come forward. So we have a very pivotal election coming up, as we all know. At the top of it, we have some decency and honesty and democracy. And so that's voting for Harrison Walls. At the bottom, we have voting to firmly establish in our Constitution reproductive rights, and as well as LGBTQ rights. And in the middle, someplace, we get a chance to vote to put a doctor in the House. So again, thank you.
Ryan Armagost.
Thank you. And I just want to, again, thank the League of Women Voters for putting this on, and everyone that's been part of putting this together, and everyone that's been part of this panel. We are in a state here that we are completely out of balance. I think a supermajority in any state, no matter which side is in the supermajority, is not effective to taking care of all of its state's needs. We need balance in this state. We need to increase the balance in this state. And the only way to do that is to vote correctly when it comes time in November. I think the hard part is, again, with that diversity, we have to have people that are willing to come to the table and work across the aisle. Every one of my bills has been bipartisan. I've had a good number of bills that have done great things for Colorado in public safety, mental health, substance use, everything else, even protecting our kids. So I look forward to doing that for another 2 years and potentially being the only law enforcement officer in the Capitol now. So again, thank you. And let's get our state back into some form of stability.
And from House District 50, Mary Young.
I'm here committing to move forward. We need to learn from the lessons from our past mistakes, but We need to incorporate that learning and move on to a better Colorado. I'm listening to what my constituents want. They want more, a better cost of living, affordable housing, making sure that they have well-paying jobs and safety issues, especially in schools. And women want healthcare without government interference. I do want to correct something. I have never voted on a bill to ban fracking. So I do want to clarify that. I know how to craft bills, meet with stakeholders, and get things done. Know how to run committees, having been a vice chair of two. I ask for your support again to be your representative.
Thank you. Ryan Gonzalez.
Just real fast to that, there was a survey that she did where she explicitly said she would ban fracking. But moving to my closing statement, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having us, and thank you for the opportunity for us to discuss that. Right now, we live in a very polarized countries and communities. I ask humbly for your support and your vote come November, because I want to work for you. I want to get results done. I want to make sure I work across the table, and I want to lower the cost of living. Like over 70% of Coloradans, I live paycheck to paycheck, and I see the personal impacts at the gas station, at the grocery store, for property taxes and everything, and it's going up for everybody. And so I promise you to definitely work for you, represent you, not give you what you want to hear. And I personally invite you, a call to action is look at the voting records, and that will speak for itself. Thank you.
I want to thank all of the candidates for their participation in this forum. We appreciate your time and willingness to serve the community with sincerity, integrity, and clarity, and for availing yourself to public service. A special thank you goes to the League members who assisted in a variety of ways, especially from the State League, Beth Hendricks, and from the local league, Barb Winery, Mary Monahan, and Kathleen Milligan. And to the audience, thank you for your interest and efforts to be informed voters. Indeed, citizen participation in candidate forums like this is another hallmark of our democratic institutions. We applaud your efforts to be informed voters. You have listened as candidates express their positions regarding a variety of topics this evening. The League of Women Voters has asked us to remind viewers that the information and perspectives presented are those of the candidates and not the sponsoring organization. We encourage voters to conduct their own research, acquire relevant background, and verify accuracy of information and opinions that were offered. To learn more about candidates' positions for these and other races, we encourage you to visit vote411.org, a league-sponsored website. Candidates have been asked to provide information which should be posted on Vote 411 in early October. Information about ballot issues will also be available on that site. And we hope you will join us on Thursday, October 17th, for a League of Women Voters discussion of the 14 state ballot issues and 4 local ballot issues. League representatives will explain each issue, provide background information, and offer pros and cons. Ballots will be mailed the week of October 14th and must be returned by 7 p.m. on Election Day, November 5. You can leave ballots at designated drop-off boxes or at polling centers. You can also return your ballot through the U.S. Postal Service. However, we encourage you to make sure that your ballot has sufficient postage by October 29th. Thanks again to candidates, League volunteers, and you, the audience. The League of Women Voters' mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. Voters' active and responsible participation in the election process makes democracy work. Thank you and good evening.